Welcome back, everyone. Today we'll be discussing the Yeezy 700 Waverunner once again. Specifically, we'll be discussing whether you should sell or hold the Yeezy 700 Waverunner and why that is. To preface this, if you guys enjoy these types of videos regarding the market, reselling, and even info on how to acquire these limited products, be sure to subscribe and enable post notifications. This way you're always 100% updated. Furthermore, for more urgent updates like the recent shock drops we've seen, follow my Twitter, KeithAdam10, and also personals for you. And of course, for early information before those even occur, follow Endurance's Twitter for updates on the next restock. For those who don't know, the Yeezy 700 Waverunner releases on March 22nd, tomorrow. Retail will be $300, which is the original Yeezy 700 retail, not the new $240, unfortunately. Since this is an Adidas product and not Nike, I cannot confirm the precise stock myself, but I would expect it to be at least on par with the last restock we saw on these, which was quite healthy, but not abnormally high, and definitely lower than $350 general release stock. In order to determine if the Yeezy 700 Waverunner will be a fruitful hold or not, we will cover an estimated range of what the sneaker will settle at after the drop, and also when shipments come in, essentially all the pairs going into circulation, whether they're expected to increase post-drop or even hypothetically decrease, along with how much specifically over specific periods of time, and finally, what type of margin are we looking at for these in terms of holding, not the retail to resale initial margin, but rather just the hold margin over X period of time. Basically, are these going to be worth your time even if they do go up? Kicking it off, let's discuss the estimated range that these should be settling at. To begin with, as I mentioned earlier, I'm expecting stock on these to be relatively high based off of how much stock there was on the prior re-release, but nothing too crazy and likely less stock than that of a Yeezy 350 general release. Now, when it comes to the demand, it isn't terrible, but it's definitely not ideal for the retail that these do have of $300. Pre-sale is only about $90 over retail on average before the drops occurring, and the bids aren't terrible either, but definitely not very notable, with only a few very high ones and the rest trailing in the mid 300 range. Sale volume is not impressive either, a notable contrast to the recent Yeezy 350 Oreo and Blue Stripe that we just discussed, those of which had immense demand. I'd say that the sale volume is more similar to the Yeezy 500 Blush pre-sale that we did see, which isn't great, unfortunately. Granted, there are no finish line early access pairs or foot app pre-sellers, but there still is plenty of stock in circulation from the prior re-releases, and the pre-sale is so low already, so the sale volume really isn't great to see in these conditions. Now, had these had the new Yeezy 700 retail of $240, this would all be fine, but unfortunately that is not the case. These are retailing for the old $300 retail, and some of you guys are of course going to have to pay tax on that. Hence, for those of you who do have tax in your state, after selling fees, you'd at maximum make just a couple of dollars profit after the release, with an absolutely terrible margin, if even. If you have no tax, on the other hand, you should still be able to make a small profit off of these, but still with a poor margin since the retail is still very high at $300. Now, regarding a specific range, prices have already seen the vast majority of their pre-drop decrease following the initial rumors that started many months ago. This leaves the current average at about $388 for sizes 4 to 12, but of course, this is only the pre-drop average. Remember, we tend to not include sizes like 12.5 and up, since those are often outliers and they tend to throw off the mean. We normally see a notable change post-US drop. This is when we normally experience what I like to refer to as the impulsivity effect. Guess you know what I'm referring to by now, as we discuss this very frequently, yet it almost always occurs to some degree. Regarding the impulsivity effect, if you haven't watched my seller hold videos before, sneaker drops specifically impact human impulsiveness significantly after an individual fails to acquire that desired product due to insufficient supply and too much demand. Therefore, on average, we normally see about a 5 to 10% increase of the pre-drop prices post-drop. Now, that 5 to 10% isn't always the case, unfortunately, such as when a sneaker is already slightly overvalued. When it comes to these Yeezy 700 Waverunners, I'm expecting a somewhat similar reaction to what we saw on the Yeezy 500 Blush post-drop, and just like the Yeezy 500 Blush, these had relatively low sale volume pre-drop, despite pre-sale already being relatively low compared to their prior rates, along with a low amount of bids as well. And when it came to those Yeezy 500 Blushes post-drop, I initially expected no positive impulsivity effect at all, and in fact, we actually saw a mild negative impulsivity effect as well, despite the fact that I thought that an additional supply was already priced into the market somewhat well, but I guess that wasn't even the case, because they still dropped some more afterwards. Hence, I'm expecting a somewhat similar situation with these, just proportional, so perhaps a 2% decrease decrease in price post-drop tomorrow rather than a positive impulsivity effect, which we would have loved to see. Maybe I'll be wrong, and of course that'll be fantastic if we do see that. Hence, with a 2% decrease, prices would hypothetically drop to a potential $380 average rather than increasing in price. So now let's discuss what prices will look like once shipments go out within that 1 to 2 week range. During this period, the vast majority of pairs will be going into circulation. Contrary to most Yeezys we've discussed, I'd expect a relatively low amount of decrease after shipments, considering prices are getting close to retail anyway already. That, of course, isn't to say that there isn't some more room to decrease. I just expect a very small amount of only 5%. Hence, with a 5% decrease, we may see the average of 4 to 12 dip to about $361 after all shipments go out within 1 to 2 weeks. So now with the average price ranges at those points in time evident, let's discuss whether they're expected to increase from this range or even continue to decrease. When it comes to these Yeezy 700 Waverunners, just like the Yeezy 350 Oreo we discussed a few days ago, we actually have a perfect comparison for these, and that's the Yeezy 700 Waverunner itself, since these already released and even re-released multiple times, and we have all the data to show for it. So what exactly did we see after these Yeezy 700 Waverunners released? Most importantly, the most recent re-release. Well, first, as rumors spread of this 2020 re-release, prices fell in the same manner as they have recently to around the same range that they're at right now. Following the drop, they dipped a little further to around the price that we're expecting these to end up at after shipments, and that's the $360 to $380 range. However, after about 1 year, they did end up increasing to about $650 from a low of about $370 or so, allowing for about a 75% ROI, which is extremely impressive considering this happened in less than a year. Even before this peak, they hit $580 rather quickly within just half a year, allowing for about a 50% ROI in just that small period of time. They did end up plummeting in price after the word of a re-release started spreading, but if you did sell before that, you would have had a tremendous gain in a very short amount of time too. Hence, I'm expecting these to increase post-drop just as we saw back in 2020 to 2021. But finally, regarding the hold margin on these, essentially, are these actually going to be worth your time even if they do end up increasing? Well, considering what we just went over, it seems that these do have that potential to achieve, at the very least, a good ROI in 1 year, even if they don't end up back at the high 650, even if they could only get to say 500 and change or so, that's still definitely a good notable ROI. What's most impressive is how many times these have re-released, yet they almost always recover before news comes out, of course, of another re-release. Hence, I have decided to rate these a 6 out of 10 hold, just because it seems very likely that these will once again rebound just as they have in the past so many times. I wanted to give these a 7 out of 10 rating, but given how frequently and unpredictably the release announcements come for the re-releases that do end up crashing prices, I did want to deduct 1 for that inevitable risk that's going to be occurring. So it makes these more of a short-term hold, perhaps a 1-year hold, rather than a long-term hold like we discussed for a lot of other pairs. I'll personally be holding the majority of my pairs, but relatively short term. I'm going to try to sell these within less than 12 months after they recover a little bit. It depends where prices are at. Maybe I'll try to sell within 10 months or so, as I know they will eventually re-release again. We just have no idea when it's going to occur, unfortunately. Most likely it will be at least after 1.5 years or so, but we'll see, of course. Also, just a note in general for anyone considering holding any items who do have low capital, you should never hold anything in general if you don't have sufficient capital to go for as many drops as possible at your full potential without holding back. If you do need money to go for all drops, try to sell these as soon as possible. Let me know what you guys are doing with your pairs down in the comments below. Since this is just a discussion at the end of the day, I can't predict the future. That's just my personal analysis based on the data that I've acknowledged. We have a lot of brilliant minds watching the video right now, so I implore you to leave your notions down in the comments below. But anyway, that will conclude it for today. Feel free to leave a like if you enjoyed, or perhaps if you learned a thing or two. Subscribe, enable post notifications. This way you stay 100% updated on all these hyped releases. Also, feel free to check out the links in the description below for reliable, fast, residential proxies and pre-verified Nike sneakers or Adidas accounts. Also, feel free to follow Endurance's Twitter for updates on restocks or key giveaways, and the same goes for Gargantua if you want to keep up with the progress or restocks. Last but not least, make sure to follow Keith Adam 10 and personals for you. This way you guys stay updated on all urgent info like I was discussing today. With that though, I will see you guys later. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and of course, good luck on this drop, or if you already copped, congratulations.